that an ICE officer shot and killed someone in Minneapolis. My deepest condolences to the family, to the loved ones who had to learn about this tragic event on national television. We have been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV, and today that recklessness cost someone their life. I've reached out to Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, and I'm waiting to hear back. Let me be clear, Donald Trump and his administration may not care much about Minnesota. That's been pretty evident, but we love this state. We won't let them tear us apart. We'll not turn against each other. To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully, as you always do. We can't give them what they want. The hearts and minds of the people in this state are on our side. To Americans, I ask you this: please stand with Minneapolis. To Minnesotans, know that our administration is going to stop at nothing to seek accountability and justice. The State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are working on the investigation. We have activated the State Emergency Operations Center. State Patrol and Minnesota National Guard leadership is connected with the Minneapolis Police Department, the St. Paul Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the DNR, and Minnesota's Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We have activated dozens of members of the State Patrol's mobile response team. And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community, they're business owners, they're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not take the bait. We will continue to update you, Minnesota, as we get more information. Now I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Bob Jacobson of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor mentioned, my name is Bob Jacobson. It is my honor to serve as the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. First of all, I want to acknowledge the reason that we are all here. The loss of life is not anything anyone would ever want. We fully expect that the community will want to peacefully demonstrate their anger or frustration. Minnesota residents and visitors have the right to peacefully demonstrate. We recognize that demonstrations are often driven by strong emotions, beliefs, and certainly a desire to be heard. Our role is to help ensure everyone can express themselves without anyone getting hurt. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety's role through the Minnesota State Patrol is to ensure safety, protect constitutional rights, keep roads accessible, and above all, to prevent harm. Our top priority is public safety. Our focus is keeping demonstrators, community members, drivers, and law enforcement safe, especially during moments of heightened tension or uncertainty. Demonstrations must remain safe and lawful, particularly around roadways. We will join with our partners to support safety while respecting the right to protest. With that in mind, I'd like to share a few safe and lawful ways to demonstrate. Minnesotans can safely and legally express their views in many ways, including getting together peacefully with others in public spaces, marching or walking, not on roadways, making your voice heard through chants, speeches, and displaying signs, being present in public areas where pedestrians are allowed, gathering in designated or permitted areas, And these actions will allow people to express themselves while protecting the safety of everyone involved. Unsafe or illegal actions could result in fines or arrests. Certain behaviors create serious hazards that threaten public safety, disrupt emergency services, or put people at risk. These actions could result in fines or arrest. Demonstrating on or entering a freeway on foot, walking on highways, throwing objects, starting or setting fires, damaging property or graffiti, using illegal fireworks, displaying or using illegal weapons, reckless or dangerous driving, especially near pedestrians, and certainly assaultive, aggressive, or riotous behavior toward anyone. We all want definitive answers to what happened today. Our Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is working in conjunction with the FBI to investigate this morning's shooting. As you know, we don't comment on active investigations, but also keep in mind that this is an investigation is also in its infancy. So any speculation about what had happened would be just that. And we will not engage in speculation. With that, I will turn it back over to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'd be glad to take any questions.
What do you mean when you say that the National Guard at the ready?
Yeah, and I can let General Schaefer talk about this. It so happens it's a training weekend. We've got about 7,500 troops in training at our sites, training sites across the state. What it is, and in the National Guard, you give a warning order, which is a heads up of something could be coming. That just allows people to think about what they would need, what it would mean to mobilize, what it would mean to put them in. And I could let the General talk a little bit about this. Obviously, since the summer of 2020, we had a lot of work done on teams being ready to make sure that civil unrest. And what that means, and I think Commissioner Jacobson was very clear, and I want Minnesotans to hear this from me, the desire to get out and protest and to speak up to this administration of how wrong this is, that is a patriotic duty at this point in time, but it needs to be done safely. And I think the Commissioner simply just laid out some of those parameters. We can do that. This is the peaceful resistance that we need. Simon, you want to say a few things about what that means to have them on the ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Governor. So for the military, Minnesota National Guard is comprised of 13,000 soldiers and airmen. We live all across and work throughout Minnesota. A warning order is just an initial step to increase your preparations. The Minnesota Guard is always prepared to respond and support state agencies and the citizens of Minnesota. So what that means for us today is just some additional checks on equipment that is ready at all times, and maybe some additional phone calls to service members who might be activated, but no activations. We are embedded with our state agencies here at the Operations Center to just continue parallel planning in the event that we are needed to support.
Thanks, General. And I would make note, Mary, and to Minnesotans on this about the National Guard, they're there to protect you and protect your constitutional rights. These are our neighbors. They don't wear masks. They don't bust in from somewhere else. They're not here to cause hassles to you or what we saw today, the tragedy. Having them at the ready to make sure, because when we see these types of things happen, and we saw it after the murder of George Floyd, there's folks that want to cause chaos. There's the disruptors in it. And while the vast majority of those protests were peaceful expressions of their First Amendment rights, there were those that destroyed property and put people at risk. The National Guard is there to make sure that peaceful protests are able to be done and that those that want to do the destruction are stopped from doing that. Yes?
What is your threshold for activating the National Guard? You're talking about large-scale demonstrations, but
Yeah.
the demonstrations at these ICE raids have been increasing in intention to the point where we saw one shot today.
Yeah, and I think apparently by a federal agent, not by Minnesotans who were there to express their First Amendment rights. I think we've seen this to have folks ready. The gatherings that were down there today, I think this shocked everyone. People showed up as they should. There's people putting flowers down on a memorial. There's people expressing their anger. It's just as these situations develop, we decide when we need to move these people out. And I think the local reporters know well on this, both unfortunately and for us, the upside of this is that we're very good and we've had practice at this. And I just want to, again, implore Minnesotans, I am not telling you not to express your anger or your frustrations or the outrage that we have. Look, this was This was totally predictable, as I said it yesterday, and it was totally avoidable. And I just want to remind you, too, that local law enforcement, we get no coordination. They don't tell us they're coming. They don't say why they're sending the largest deployment in American history to Minneapolis. They're not making us any safer. We don't have any of that coordination. They should be talking to us when we do these things. Let us know. We're going to be down here. This is going to happen. We don't have that. So when you see local law enforcement or state patrol, or if it would take the National Guard, we're there responding to the chaos they've created too, but our role is to make sure that we're protecting Minnesotans so that something like this doesn't happen. I have not. The question was, have I spoken to the individual's family? No, we do not have a definitive ID on this individual. And I'm going to note to all of you, I think it's really important, and the professionals do this, and they train me to do this. This is an open investigation. You need to be very careful about it. I know that many of you, myself included, have seen a very difficult video to watch, one where there's a family member watched their family member be shot and killed in front of them. It's beyond me that apparently from the federal government, from the Homeland Security Director herself, has already determined who this person was, what their motive was, and they hadn't even been taken out of the vehicle. We're not living in a normal world. And so, no, I have not. And I want to be very careful because I know how painful this is. I know how painful it is right now. I'm saying person and all that. This is a human being. This very well is an individual's child, a parent, and we don't know that yet. So, no, I have not, but once we do, we will. So, yes. Please. Colonel, would you like to do that? Colonel?
So the governor was mentioning mobilizing more of the state patrol. How many state patrol people are on the ground in Minneapolis right now? And should there have been more state patrol people on the ground like a couple weeks ago when I came?
So the question was, how many state patrol troopers have been deployed to the city of Minneapolis? Right now, we don't talk typical numbers because that is considered security information. We do have a specialized team that does deal with crowd control, and so they have been deployed. But again, they are from all over the state of Minnesota, so they will come in tiers to the state.
And they had already been on the ground to some extent before today?
No, it was in response to this event.
One more. Sorry, just to clarify the intention of deploying National Guard, is there any chance that the National Guard will be deployed against federal agents to protect Minnesotans?
I'm sorry. What was it?
Has the National Guard ever been deployed against federal agents to protect Minnesotans, given the context of what happened earlier today?
Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. I think in this case that the National Guard is their main mission. They have a dual mission. There's the federal mission when they're under Title 10 orders, and then they're under Title 32 orders. In this warning order, there's nothing officially been done yet. If I am to activate them as the Commander-in-Chief of the Minnesota National Guard, I will issue the executive order to the Minnesota National Guard, and then they will be put in state duty status. And as you've seen over the last few years, that could be flood prevention, that could be after a wind-blowing storm up in the north, up in Bemidji, or it could be COVID or George Floyd response. In this case, again, it doesn't necessarily change the mission. They're there to protect Minnesotans. They're there to serve Minnesotans. I think the thing that is so challenging in the moment we're in is we don't see a desire to work with us on public safety. We hear a demonization of our state. We see people coming in who don't know our community, and we see this massive display for the TVs that we're trying to understand how is this coordinated. And some of you watch the videos on there, total chaos. And look, I have very limited work in this is the training in the National Guard, but I've had a lot of training now to watch how our professionals operate. After this person was shot, federal agents milling around, touching the vehicle at a crime scene and things, I don't know what to tell you, and I don't quite know how to respond to the question other than my primary responsibility as governor is the protection of the people of Minnesota, and you can be assured whether it's the State Patrol or whether it's the National Guard, their deployment is there to protect Minnesotans from whatever it is. If it's an act of nature, if it's a global pandemic, or in this case, if it is a rogue federal agent. I don't know at this time, and I want to be very careful. It's unprecedented that we have the federal government's already determined exactly what's happened here and the motives of an individual that we don't even know the name. They don't know the name, and that's very difficult. So, well, one more, Dana. Dana. Look, and I understand the uniqueness of this moment in this week, following this week, seeing what's happening in the backdrop of a show hearing in D.C. My job is to govern, and my job is to see what the facts are. This happened a couple of hours ago, and we're already pitting American against American. All of you saw a video in your eyes. We have a chaotic situation caused by the largest deployment in American history of federal agents into a community with no communication to locals. We had a chaotic situation where an individual is in their car, shot and killed. And so, look, I want to be very cautious here because Donald Trump will make this about me. He will make this about politics. This is about public safety, and this is about normalcy. To Americans who are watching this, if you're in Portland or you're in LA or you're in Chicago or you're wherever they're coming next, stand with us. Stand with us against this. This was so preventable, so unnecessary, and I don't know, I hope. Maybe we're at the McCarthy moment. Do you have no decency? Do you have no decency? We have someone dead in their car for no reason whatsoever. And I don't want to be right about this, but I said if they do this, they're going to create a chaotic situation where someone innocent's going to get killed. And they did it. And now we hear more political rhetoric. Enough. Enough is enough. And so to Minnesotans, don't take the bait. Do not take the bait. Do not allow them to deploy federal troops into here. Do not allow them to invoke the Insurrection Act. Do not allow them to declare martial law. Do not allow them to lie about the security and the decency of this state. And let's let this investigation play itself out. Let's make sure we protect our neighbors. I encourage you to use your First Amendment rights and all of your constitutional rights, but do so in a peaceful manner. We'll gather back with you as soon as we gather more information that needs to be put out. But again, stay safe, Minnesotans, and we'll be back with you. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, we just heard from Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. A couple of newsy elements there that we just learned. First off, we know that there has been a warning order issued to the state National Guard in case they might be needed for demonstrations that might be a result of what we saw today in southern Minneapolis. We know that right now the Guard is doing equipment checks and making phone calls to troops who could be activated, but we also know there are about 7,500 troops at training sites. We also know that the state has deployed its public safety department to ensure that demonstrations maintain peaceful and stay off of roadways. The governor's saying we know that people want to peacefully demonstrate, but that folks want to cause chaos, and that after the murder of George Floyd, the vast majority of people were peaceful, but there were those that destroyed property. We heard the governor there say that President Trump is governing by reality TV, and that he's reached out to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and is waiting to hear back. He said to Secretary Noem and President Trump, "You've done enough." And he said, "We will not allow our city to be a prop. We will not take the bait." He also said toward the end of his remarks that, to his view, he saw federal agents milling about and touching the vehicle in question here and questioned that. He said that he thought Donald Trump would make this about politics, but this is about public safety. This is about normalcy. He put a call out to people in cities where they're going next, saying, "Stand with us. This was so preventable and so unnecessary." And he said, maybe we're at a McCarthy moment. do you have no decency? Let's go ahead now and go. First of all, do we have Ed O'Keefe? All right, we don't have him yet, but I do want to ask him soon because the president has posted on Truth Social about this. In fact, let's go ahead and watch the video that the president posted. And a warning, the video is graphic, it has no audio. It's coming, everybody, hang on. All right, this is not the video that the president had posted on Truth Social, but it is one vantage point. And so this is what we were discussing with Anna Schechter earlier, in which you saw that sort of purple SUV type vehicle. Let's go ahead and watch it again. You see that agent on the left trying to open the driver's side door. She appears to reverse and then accelerate. And at that point, that officer fires. The mayor said at least 2 shots. I hear at least 3 shots, and we know that she suffered a gunshot wound to the head and then crashes the vehicle. Before we go to Anna Schechter, let's go to Ed O'Keefe. I hear that we have him. And Ed, the president posting on Truth Social that the agent is lucky to be alive and is recovering at the hospital.
Yeah. So the president, before Governor Walz began, posted on Truth Social, in essence, responding to what is playing out online and in the streets of Minneapolis, saying in part that the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. He then adds, based on the clip that he posted, it's hard to believe he's still alive. The thing is, in the video clip we've been airing, you can see the officer chase after the vehicle after the shooting. So he was standing at least until moments after that shooting occurred. The president says the situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They're just trying to do the job of making America safe. No other specific response yet from here at the White House to the mayor. Jacob Frey's calls for ICE to leave his city, to the governor now saying that the state is in no more need of federal assistance. The way he said that, though, we don't need anything else from you, is the kind of statement I could see this administration using against the governor later on in some other unrelated incident where they need federal assistance. And the president or someone at Homeland Security is going to say, well, you said you didn't need our help. So let's just see how that plays out in the coming days. Look, obviously, this is a state, this is a governor, this is a subject, immigration enforcement, that has been of great focus here at the White House. This 15-fold increase in DHS's deployment to the state comes amid a federal surge of other resources to investigate, to account for how federal funding is being spent by various social agencies and programs in the state, amid weeks of renewed attention on several years' worth of allegations and charges against people for alleged fraud in misusing state funds or federal funding that helped state and local programs. Among other things, the Medicaid program is checking on recipients in the state. The Labor Department is conducting a targeted review of Minnesota's unemployment program. The Agriculture Department is pushing Minnesota to serve up information on SNAP recipients, although several Democratic-controlled states are suing to block that ask because they're concerned that the information would be used to check the immigration status of SNAP recipients. The Small Business Administration says it suspended nearly 7,000 borrowers amid suspected fraudulent activity. So there's all sorts of federal focus on the state. This enforcement is the most visible, and now obviously one that's going to be subject of great review and grave concern given what occurred. And to hear the governor and his public safety commissioner there call for calm in the coming hours and suggest there are peaceful ways to express opposition and concern and certainly understandable upsetness about what happened there is foreshadowing what could occur should the response in the coming hours become more violent. And it's telling, I don't know if Nicole Skanga has shared this bit here on 24/7, but she pointed out a little while ago that where this shooting occurred is only about a mile from where George Floyd was killed back in 2020. So it's an entire neighborhood inside a city, inside a region, and a state that's been reeling for several years because of law enforcement-related activity, because of the focus of this White House on Minnesota, given its Democratic control. And so the emotions there in that neighborhood and in that city, obviously, quite raw. And we'll see how the White House and the federal government responds to it in the coming hours.
And she does point out that there has been a major surge in Minnesota, an influx of 1,500 agents, ICE enforcement and removal operation agents, 650 Homeland Security investigations agents, a 15-fold increase in the usual ICE presence in the region. Ed, I'm curious, based on your knowledge of typical cabinet communication with local and state authorities after something like this, is it unusual that Governor Walz has not gotten a call back yet from DHS Secretary Noem?
Not necessarily in the Trump administration, no. But not knowing her exact whereabouts, it could be that she is traveling or otherwise engaged. She was, remember, she met with and was interviewed by Nicole Skanga in Minneapolis on Monday, or on Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, and she's on the U.S.-Mexico border in South Texas. She was reviewing operations there, given that Homeland Security has a vast array of responsibilities across the country on all sorts of matters. So we'll see if she makes contact with him at some point, or if some other senior federal official does, what that communication is like. You know, this is obviously a really challenging one for both sides, and there's no love lost between the Trump administration, the Trump White House, and Governor Walz, who, of course, has been such a focus of the president's criticism in recent weeks, and the White House quite pleased to hear this week that he decided not to run for re-election, in part saying earlier today that it was clear that he was probably going to lose that, or he realized that he was going to lose that re-election because of this renewed focus on alleged fraud in the state. That came up during the daily press briefing with the press secretary. So we'll wait and hear, and if we get anything on exactly any federal to Minnesota communication, we'll pass it along. And again, we've seen no specific response from the president to the governor and the mayor's calls that they get out of Minnesota. If anything, that might compel them to just double down. We'll see, Lindsay.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much. Let's bring in the head of our crime and policing unit, Anna Schechter. Anna, what are your thoughts and comments after that news conference and post from President Trump?
Well, I wasn't surprised by what Governor Walz said. He took his swipes at President Trump, the White House, and the immigration policy that flooded his state with ICE agents. We know that it was an ICE agent who pulled the trigger. There has been tension in multiple communities around the country over the last few months, and sometimes that's been Border Patrol agents, sometimes it was National Guard. In this instance, it was an ICE agent who pulled that trigger. And so I wasn't surprised by what the governor said. He's been diametrically opposed to President Trump on this specific issue of the immigration crackdown and has been outspoken about that. And I also learned, and the governor reiterated what we heard from the police chief earlier today, that the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in the state of Minnesota is investigating this in partnership with the FBI. So that's a really interesting point, and I think an important one. The Minneapolis Police Department secured the scene as a crime scene. That's another important point. They're gathering evidence. Investigators are going to look at the track marks of the wheels in the snow. They're going to measure the angles of the turn of the vehicle. They're going to try to measure the speed at which the vehicle was going. There are a lot of calculations that go into these investigations, and they're very specific. They have tools to do this, and all of that work has already probably begun at this time. And so let's see what that investigation finds, because different angles of the video show different things. President Trump and some of his supporters have been tweeting out a third angle that I've seen, which is from a little bit further away, and you see the vehicle accelerate. It appears to me she was shot and maybe her foot was on the gas pedal, and that's why the car accelerated and then crashed into another vehicle. This was right after or just as that lethal shot was fired. And so investigators are going to try to figure out, is that exactly what happened? Did she put her foot on the gas? And they're going to be analyzing every single angle of this. So all of that is underway, and that is going to potentially go to a prosecutor, probably what I would say is a local prosecutor, potentially, who might decide to bring a charge.
Okay, there are two things I want to ask you about. And one is, I believe, another vantage point, if we can play that. Okay, this is the video that we have been showing you that we have already analyzed. I want to ask you about something else, Anna, and that is that the Department of Homeland Security's policy on deadly force, we obtained it from the agency's website. It was dated February 6, 2023, and it includes guidelines. And it says, in general, a law enforcement officer's use of deadly force must be objectively reasonable in light of the fact and circumstances confronting the law enforcement officer at the time force is applied. DHS law enforcement officers may use deadly force only when necessary. That is when law enforcement officer has reasonable belief that the subject of such force poses an immediate threat of death or serious bodily injury to the law enforcement officer or to the other person. Goes on to say, fleeing subjects. Deadly force shall not be used solely to prevent the escape of a fleeing subject.
Therein lies the rub. That is a very important point.
However, deadly force is authorized to prevent the escape of a fleeing subject where the law enforcement officer has a reasonable belief that the subject poses a significant threat of death or serious physical harm to the law enforcement officer or others, and such force is necessary to prevent escape.
So you've just homed in on a really important point, and I'm just going to reiterate, we don't know what led up to this event. Why did the agents want her to get out of the vehicle? Did something happen prior to that and they wanted to apprehend her? Regardless of that, it did seem, from my read of the vehicle, and the investigators are going to look at this, was she trying to flee? It seems unlikely to me that she would pose a potentially lethal threat to others if she were to flee. But this might go directly to what agents might argue in their defense of why specifically that one ICE agent pulled the trigger. But those agents wanted her out of the car. Why? What happened in the minutes leading up to that? And we need to be hearing from eyewitnesses. Is there other video that shows that?
What's the body cam policy
for these federal agents? That's a great question. So for Minneapolis police, they absolutely have to wear body cam video. But
because Nicole Skanga confirmed via two federal sources the agent who discharged his weapon was an immigration agent with ICE enforcement and removal operations team.
Exactly. So they don't necessarily have to be wearing body cam. So I don't know that we're going to be able to see that. If it was a police officer, certainly, but this is different. And I also want to talk about training. An ICE agent is trained in a different way than a police officer. Before they're deployed, they're all supposed to get some kind of de-escalation training. But given what's been going on in our country in law enforcement over the last 20 years, and specifically the last 10 years, the big police departments, certainly the Minneapolis Police Department after the murder of George Floyd, they instituted a rigorous new training on de-escalation, on use of force, on how to de-escalate a situation, how to be safe about it. It's not necessarily true that the ICE agents have received that level of training. They're trained to do different things. They're not trained to be dealing with crowds, dealing with people who are upset by their actions and taunting them. What those agents needed to be doing was de-escalating, and it's unclear to me that they were trained to de-escalate, that they had the right training to mitigate that situation so that it wouldn't end in a deadly gunshot to the head of a woman driving a vehicle.
Anna Schechter, head of our crime and policing unit, thank you so very much. And I will have more tonight on the Daily Report at 6 p.m. Eastern. CBS News 27 coverage of this continues next. Elizabeth Cook will take this from San Francisco.
You are watching CBS News 24/7. I'm Elizabeth Cook. We are continuing to follow that breaking news out of Minneapolis, where an ICE agent shot and killed a woman in her car. The victim is 37 years old and a U.S. citizen, according to Minnesota U.S. Senator Tina Smith. City leaders also say she was not a target for an ICE-related arrest. Video recorded by a bystander captures the moments those shots were fired.
No! No! Shame! Shame!
You can see officers there confront the woman in her car. They try to open her door. She backs up. Then an agent in front of the car moves further to the driver's side. When she puts it into drive, that officer pulls out his gun and begins firing. Now, the car ends up hitting a parked car there on the street, and other bystanders are yelling at the officers. Now, meanwhile, crowds of protesters flooded the scene after that shooting, clashing with federal agents. Officers set off a chemical spray and pulled people to the ground. You can see at least one protester throw a snowball at that officer. Now, DHS says the ICE officer who killed the woman acted in self-defense, claiming she was blocking ICE activity with her car. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey called that a, quote, garbage narrative, arguing the officer acted recklessly and demanded ICE get out of the city.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead.
Now, we have new pictures of the aftermath of that shooting. You can see a bullet hole in the front windshield of that red SUV, which had crashed into a pole after the shooting. Pictures show the driver's side headrest and seat splattered with blood. I want to bring in CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga live for us at the scene. Nicole, what do we know exactly about what happened in the moments leading up to the shooting?
We know that there were personnel, immigration agents from ICE ERO, enforcement and removal operations, that were conducting immigration targeted operations in this neighborhood. And folks we've been talking to on the street here, neighbors, say that they had seen this federal law enforcement presence for days and for weeks. And just to set the scene for you here, there is a growing vigil behind me for the 37-year-old woman who was killed. We are less than a mile away from where George Floyd was killed at the hands of police. And here, just talking to neighbors, talking to eyewitnesses, there's grief, there's tears. We saw protests get very tense earlier today with ICE agents deploying tear gas canisters, individuals wheezing, choking in the streets, really standoffs between protesters and federal law enforcement. And the federal law enforcement footprint here at the scene, of course, is large. We've seen FBI personnel who will take the lead in investigating this ICE-related shooting. But beyond that, in the city of Minneapolis, we have seen more than 2,000 federal agents descend on the city. That is the single largest DHS deployment of federal agents under the Trump administration. Bigger than LA, bigger than New York, and bigger than Chicago. And the number of ICE ERO agents has increased 15 times fold. Now, we know that the agent who opened fire today was an ICE ERO agent. We are awaiting more details on that, but we know that that agent should have been trained in use of force policy and only opened fire in the instance of immediate harm or possible death based on ICE protocol and DHS protocol. Now, we spoke with the Homeland Security Secretary yesterday, who expressed concern for her agents here on the ground, acknowledging that the situation has been very tense, but saying that agents are here in the name of public safety. When we posed that to eyewitnesses today, they said it's the opposite, and they would like to see federal law enforcement off their streets. We know that Governor Walz spoke just minutes ago, telling folks that he has been warning the federal government for weeks that this would happen, and that he has reached out to the DHS secretary today and is waiting to hear back.
Nicole Skanga, live for us at the scene in Minneapolis. Thank you so much, Nicole. We're also hearing from a witness who says he saw the ICE agent fire his weapon. He tells us he looked outside his window and saw hundreds of armed agents in front of his home.
And heard the car horns honking, alerting people in the area that ICE was coming through. I've heard the honking a few times, but it kept going. It was right outside. Lots of, nothing really concrete has landed. It doesn't feel like it's set in. It doesn't totally feel real, to see hundreds of armed, masked agents in the street in front of my house.
Joining us live now is CBS News senior coordinating producer Anna Schechter. And a lot to go through here, but let's begin with that clash between federal agents and protesters in the aftermath of this shooting. What did you see?
Well, you saw multiple witnesses, bystanders, shouting at the federal agents, asking them why they did what they did. But I also want to go back to what preceded the shooting, and we really don't know what happened in the minutes leading up to it. But certainly in the 30 seconds leading up to it, according to the videos that I've seen, there was already a heightened sense of tension and stress there in that neighborhood because people didn't want ICE agents there. They were shouting at the ICE agents, telling them to get out of there. And then when the victim was pulling away, two agents were trying to stop her from leaving. And one of the agents was even grabbing onto the outside handle of the vehicle door, trying to get her out of the car. They also shouted at her to exit the vehicle. Why is that? That's a big question. I'd like to know the answer to that question. Then she started to try to drive away. There was a third agent standing just in front of the car, and he is the one that fired that shot. And in the video showing the aftermath, we see a bullet hole in the front windshield of the car, and we learned that the victim was shot in the face and killed. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. And at that point, you see these witnesses shouting in shock at what happened. And some agents went to her, administered first aid, and obviously 911 was called, and she was transported to the hospital. But it is just a shocking scene. It was already tense yesterday. It was even more this morning, but we don't know exactly what led up to this. And I think a review of that and an investigation is currently underway by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehensions in tandem with the FBI, and they want to find out exactly what happened. And a lot of detail is going to be going into that report so that we, members of the public, hopefully will get that report and can get all the details.
I want to dig in a little bit deeper into that investigation portion of this, but first I want to talk about what city officials had to say. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says that he wants ICE to get out of the city. He also called the agent acted in self-defense. Those allegations, he says that's garbage. Take a listen.
What I can tell you is the narrative that this was just done in self-defense is a garbage narrative. That is not true. It has no truth. And it needs to be stated very clearly since we have already seen a video of it. I do not know as to what you're talking about.
Anna, can you tell us a little bit more about the mayor's message there and also what Governor Tim Walz had to say just moments ago?
100%. The mayor and the governor are aligned. They did not want ICE to descend on their city. They were vocal about it, even leading up to the more than 1,000 ICE agents that went to Minneapolis. And our Nicole Skanga was there with them yesterday. They didn't want that to happen, and so now politics are coming into play. Obviously, this was a horrific tragedy that didn't have to happen, but the governor and the mayor are saying that it's the fault of the ICE agents. Meanwhile, head of Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, is saying that the ICE agent acted in self-defense. President Trump has posted to Truth Social saying the same and describing a very different set of circumstances, describing the victim as having run over the agent. And all of that as I mentioned earlier, is the subject of this investigation. We've seen a few angles. Investigators are going to look at more. They're going to interview eyewitnesses. They're going to be looking at and analyzing the tire marks in the snow, analyzing the bullet hole in the windshield. They're going to be analyzing the position. They're, of course, interviewing the agent that fired his weapon. And just a reminder as well that the rules of engagement for federal agents as well as local law enforcement agents is to respond reasonably to a perceived threat. So it has to be a reasonable action for it to be defensible. That's at the heart of the matter, and there's going to be a big fight about that going forward.
Anna Schechter, thank you so much. All right, let's bring in CBS News' Chanel Call, who's been going through the videos from the event in our newsroom in New York City. Chanel, what can you tell us about those?
Well, Liz, you shared with our viewers earlier in the program that new and now verified video of the moment this happened, the moment that ICE agents shot and killed a woman who was in her car, who was driving away from federal agents in her neighborhood. We also have some new video to share with you of the aftermath of that moment. And I want to show you what we see here. So there are ICE agents sort of lining this residential street, and then you see them pulling a person out of the car. After that, it does appear as though they're trying to give that person CPR. Then they're seen carrying that person by their hands and feet. Now, we were there on the scene, and our local crew there spoke to a witness about what they saw and heard. Take a listen.
They were not allowing EMS to come with in timely manner. They were DHS and them. They were blocking the roads and not letting EMS come with like time and like the ambulance. They just kept the roads blocked for a very long time to the point the body had to like literally get carried out the way it did.
So, Liz, the big question now is what really happened in the moments that led up to that shooting. And Anna was talking about this as well. There are so much unknown factors right now, but we are hearing two very different accounts of what may have happened. I'll show you first on my screen here what DHS is saying and how they're characterizing this moment today. They said that riders began blocking ICE officers and that one of those violent riders weaponized her vehicle, they say attempting to run over law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them. And then Liz characterizes this moment as an act of domestic terrorism. Obviously a very different picture than the one that we're hearing from folks on the ground that our local crews have been speaking to. Many witnesses are saying that is not what they believe happened. And then when we talk about the reaction on the ground there as well from law enforcement and local officials, law enforcement during that press conference this afternoon said based on what they know and they understand, it does not appear that someone actually rammed anyone. The mayor of Minneapolis, you heard from him moments ago, again calling this narrative that this was done in self-defense, a quote, garbage narrative. Back to you.
Chanel Call, thank you so much. All right, let's get right to CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro. He's live now with reaction from the White House to all of this. Aaron, the president is weighing in on the incident on Truth Social. What is he saying?
He wrote on Truth Social, quote, "It's a horrible thing to watch," but then added, the woman driving the car, in his words, was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. That bit about running over the ICE officer seems to be disputed by many of the local officials, including Governor Walz, as well as some of the video that we're seeing. President Trump also added the situation is being studied in its entirety and that the ICE officer that has been claimed to be hit or attempted to be run over is in the hospital and is alive and is doing all right. He went on to add that the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers. I also want to note that in this long post reacting to what happened in Minnesota, he also shared a clip, a different angle of the vehicle and the shooting than what has primarily been going through being posted on social media, a bit further of an angle, but where you can see the car seem to swipe the ICE officer that shot through the front of the vehicle. That's been something that President Trump shared on Truth Social and is starting to gain more steam among conservative circles on social media. I also want to note that from the press briefing earlier, kind of before news of this shooting happened, you saw White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced several measures that the administration is taking to kind of have oversight, investigate this alleged fraud in Minnesota that has been kind of in their crosshairs in the last month or so. She announced that they're going to audit Medicaid recipients. The Department of Labor is going to look at Minnesota's unemployment program. The Department of Agriculture is going to require Minnesota to conduct recertification for SNAP recipients. Leavitt described it as an all-hands-on-deck effort from the entire administration to get to the bottom of this alleged fraud in Minnesota. But certainly what happened earlier today continues the focus of Minnesota from this administration.
Aaron, while we have you, I want to ask you about this other breaking news that we're following today, the seizure of 2 oil tanker vessels linked to Venezuela. What is the White House saying about those seizures?
Yeah, Leavitt added during that press briefing that President Trump is, quote, not afraid of continuing to seize sanctioned oil tankers, and that's what they focused in here. This was the Bella 1, kind of the first one that we heard about, had been sanctioned by U.S. authorities for its prior involvement in Iranian oil trading. That's something that Leavitt mentioned. She also mentioned that some of the crew on board, if they don't obey orders from the Coast Guard or Navy SEALs and violate those, they could be subject to prosecution when they return to the U.S. She did not address a question on if this action to seize this tanker that had been last-minute registered as a Russian ship could cause conflict between the U.S. and Russia. She, again, just defended that this was a sanctioned oil tanker and, said that this could happen again.
Aaron Navarro, live for us outside the White House. Thanks so much, Aaron. Well, much more ahead right here on CBS News 24/7. Stay with us.
Go to the ends of the earth. We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness. Innovative.
Magical.
It's like being a child.
And truly original reporting.
God, you do your research. I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
The 18-year-old soccer sensation igniting worldwide buzz.
How good is this kid? The defenders are just bewitched.
Lamine Yamal.
You ever talk to the soccer ball?
I'm Major Garrett in Washington, inviting you to the Takeout. Politics, policy, people, and pop culture served up weeknights. What's on the menu? Plenty. The day's happenings with curiosity and formality and humor. It's serious discussion, but we do not take ourselves too seriously. Who is a better speaker, Mike Johnson or you? Oh, come on. Join me on the Takeout. Streaming right here on CBS News 24/7.
You both had talked about going on Survivor together.
Right.
A Survivor contestant believes his sister was murdered.
I'm sorry that I couldn't protect you.
And is determined to be her voice.
This is her speaking to everyone saying, don't let this happen to you.
48 Hours, now streaming on CBS and Paramount+.
Chilling with the queen, her name is Gayle King.
Hey!
CBS Morning.
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 CBS Mornings on CBS and where else? Paramount Plus.
See you at 7.
CBS.
CBS Mornings.
I want a mug. Yeah, good mug.
A stalker sends menacing messages to a young mother before she's murdered.
They all just kind of said, I can't believe this happened. He did it. The stalker did it. There's a killer out there, and we're going to go after him.
But the investigation reveals a sinister setup.
I think his head is spinning, thinking about what else are they going to find.
48 Hours, now streaming on CBS and Paramount+.
Money Watch is your no-nonsense guide to taking control of your finances, where I offer practical, real-world advice with no jargon and no judgment. I'm Jill Schlesinger. Listen to Money Watch wherever you get your podcasts.
It could be the greatest turnaround in college football history.
What is the magic here?
The undefeated Big Ten champs, Indiana Hoosiers.
CBS Mornings.
CBS Mornings on CBS and where else? Paramount Plus. See you at 7.
CBS Mornings.
Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. The U.S. is targeting the so-called shadow fleet of ships that the government says illegally transports oil from sanctioned nations like Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. Now, this comes after U.S. forces captured the country's leader, Nicolas Maduro, last weekend. Now, overnight, the U.S. carried out seizures of 2 oil tank vessels. The Marinera, which was formerly known as the Bella 1, that one was captured in the North Atlantic. The Sophia was captured in the Caribbean. U.S. officials say the ships operated in violation of an embargo on Venezuela. Let's bring in CBS News national security producer James Laporta. James, thank you so much for being with us. What more can you tell us about these seizures?
That's right. So it was a busy day for the U.S. military. We had 2 different seizures of 2 different ships. One was the Bella 1, which we really have to go back a month. The Coast Guard had been chasing them as the ship was trying to port into Venezuela to pick up more oil, but wasn't able to do so, and the ship essentially evaded out of the area. On Monday, CBS News was first to report that the military was planning to take that ship, and today they did. We have since learned that it was, in particular, the Navy SEALs working with their Special Operations Aviation Regiment that took over the Bella 1. And that was done in what is called U.S. European Command. Separately from that, in U.S. Southern Command, the Sophia was captured as well.
And James, why is blocking Venezuelan oil exports so important to the U.S. right now?
That's a great question. So oil in Venezuela is a meaningful and profoundly important in terms of their source of power and how they leverage their influence. And essentially by cutting off and blocking their oil exports, it really does 3 things. It cuts off their cash flow, which is what they use to pay loyalists and maintain internal control. It also disrupts this sort of shadow fleet that provides oil to Iran and to Russia. And third, it creates negotiating pressure. So now the Trump administration can use the seizure of this oil to perhaps gain some sort of secessions from the Venezuelan government. So that's really what it does. The main question that I've been wondering today is, these ships have all been sort of flagged under Russia. And as many people know, U.S. and Russia and Ukraine, or particularly U.S. and Russia, are trying to negotiate an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. And Russia, has since released a statement today saying that the U.S. was, not allowed to seize these ships. However, in the law of the sea, there are carve-outs for taking ships, and some of those carve-outs is, if a ship is sanctioned, that those ships can be interdicted. If a ship is involved in narco trafficking, those ships can be interdicted as well. So there's really what's going to be interesting in the next couple of days is will there be any sort of fallout, and will this heighten tensions between the U.S. and Russia, particularly as they try to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war?
James Laporta, thank you so much. All right, I want to bring in Max Bergman, the director of the Europe, Russia, and Eurasia program, and Stewart Center at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Max, thanks so much for being with us. The Trump administration is trying to make a case that, in addition to Venezuela, the U.S. should control Greenland. We've talked a lot about the benefits of this, including security, natural resources, and shipping lanes. But is there a bigger picture here to this when it comes to China and Russia, as we just were talking about, when it comes to oil tankers that were connected to Russia from Venezuela?
Yeah, well, there's increasing focus on the Arctic and Arctic security, partly due to the effects of climate change, where there is now an ability to sail through the Arctic, to use it as a northern sea route some parts of the year. That's mainly along the Russian coastline. But you do see an uptick in Russian activity in the Arctic as well as Chinese activity in the Arctic. So there has been a focus on the Arctic, a growing focus on the Arctic here in Washington, including during the Biden administration. So it's not as if this is sort of coming out of nowhere. What is kind of coming out of nowhere is the need for the United States to actually physically, territorially possess Greenland, that is a real head scratcher, considering we can essentially do whatever we want militarily in Greenland. We used to have 15,000 troops there during the Cold War. Now we have 150. The Danes, Denmark, which controls Greenland, it is Danish sovereign territory, have said, what do you want? Do you want to put more troops there? And we haven't really responded to that. So it's kind of a head scratcher why we're trying to possess it, and that is causing a lot of angst in Europe, and especially in Denmark and within the NATO alliance.
Yeah, I mean, let's lean into that. NATO allies in Europe, as you said, standing firm in support of Greenland and Denmark's control of Greenland. The Danish Prime Minister even warned it could lead to the demise of the NATO alliance. What do you believe could happen if the U.S. takes over Greenland?
Well, I think she's right. Look, I think what the Trump administration is trying to do is to buy Greenland. As an American taxpayer, I think this would be a big waste of money. Right now, Denmark is paying for the health care of the Greenlanders. It's roughly $500 million a year. We have a great deal right now where we can do what we want militarily, and the health and well-being of the citizens of Greenland are taken care of by the Europeans, by Denmark. And now that burden would be on the American taxpayer. But if we're trying to buy Greenland, Denmark is going to say no. And then now there are threats from the United States that we would seize Greenland militarily, which is something that we could do. We have the military power to do that. But if we did that, if we attacked effectively a NATO ally, and Denmark is a NATO ally, they fought and died in Afghanistan, it would, I think, mean the end of NATO. There is simply no way that NATO could continue. And I think it would likely mean a huge rupture in U.S.-EU economic relations, which would cause real impacts on the stock market, real impacts on U.S. tech companies that do a ton of business in Europe and are lightly taxed. I think there would be all sorts of downstream ramifications. It would essentially turn the grand alliance between U.S. and Europe, it would break it apart, and it would turn Europe into an adversary of the United States. And I don't think that's what we want, and that would come at huge costs, I think, to the U.S. economically and to U.S. security as well.
And I'm curious, what do Greenlanders think of all of this? I mean, it's the world's least densely populated country. Do they want to be controlled by the U.S.? Is there a level of resistance there on the ground?
There's extreme resistance to it. They actually had an election last year, so after the talk of this had sort of already started, and they elected a government that is very much opposed to joining the United States for the status quo. That prime minister has gone to the European Union, spoken at the European Union Parliament, and to be clear, Greenland does not want to be part of the United States. I think the polling is about 85% against that. There is a strong movement for independence from Denmark. And that is, I think, also not in U.S. interest, because then Greenland would be free to do whatever it wanted in terms of deals with China and other places. So the current status quo of Greenland being part of Denmark, they have representation in the Danish parliament, for instance, Denmark paying their health care bills and things like that, while the U.S. has free reign militarily, I think is a really good situation that we don't want to upset. And right now we are upsetting it. And so it remains to be seen how this progresses over the next few months.
Max Bergman, thank you so much. Always great to see you. All right, I want to go back to that breaking news out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where an ICE agent shot and killed a woman in her car. The victim is 37 years old and a U.S. citizen. And according to Minnesota U.S. Senator Tina Smith, city leaders also say she was not the target for an ICE-related arrest. And we have some new pictures of the aftermath of that shooting. You can see a bullet hole in the front windshield of that red SUV, which had crashed into a pole after the shooting. Pictures also show the driver's side headrest and seat splattered with blood. Crowds of protesters flooded the scene shortly after that shooting, clashing with federal agents. Officers set off some kind of chemical spray and pulled people to the ground. You can see one protester even throw a snowball at the officer there. Now, DHS says the ICE officer who killed the woman acted in self-defense, claiming she was blocking ICE activity with her car. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey called that, quote, a garbage narrative, arguing the officer acted recklessly and demanding ICE get out of the city. Let's bring in CBS News Minnesota reporter Jonah Kaplan live for us now at the scene. Jonah, can you give us the very latest? What do things look like now?
Well, I would say that the animosity, the anger has given way to more of a somber atmosphere here, and now there's even a little memorial. You could see flowers and things being set up as this is an area where a woman was killed. Of course, there's going to be a lot of arguing, and there's going to be a lot of narratives and counter-narratives about what happened at that very moment. Videos show this woman in a car, and whether she's turning towards an officer, away from an officer. You could probably go through it frame by frame, and depending on maybe what side of the political aisle you're on, you're going to come to your own conclusion that kind of fits that narrative. But what we do know is that tensions are very high here, and they've been high for several weeks. Operation Metro Surge, which was first started last month, led to the arrest of several people, most of them, by the way, not Somali. And that's significant because a lot of the reasoning, at least according to the federal government, about why these actions are taking place is because of the fraud scandal, the billion-dollar fraud scandal happening here in Minnesota, affecting all of these social services. But this latest action, when it comes to the infusion of several thousand, 2,000 federal agents, which is an enormous number. And when you think, yes, we're a border state, but it's the northern border. We're on the border of Canada here in Minnesota. 2,000 miles, though, from the southern border. Obviously, this is very significant.
Jonah, I want to get your gauge on sort of the temperature there of the city, given that this shooting happened about a mile away from where George Floyd was murdered several years ago. We've heard from several people who were there saying the city is still raw from that. Are you seeing the emotions from that day several years ago and the protests that ensued afterwards play into what's happening there today?
No question. I think there's a lot of distrust, and you really see that also because among the protesters, they do not distinguish between the agencies. Yes, a lot of the anger is towards ICE at the very moment, but if Minneapolis PD shows up, it's not like they're going to be given any more warmth, any more of a kind of amicable welcome than you would a federal agent. So whether it's Minneapolis Police, the Hennepin County Sheriff, the State Patrol, really the uniform doesn't matter. You're either law enforcement or you're not. And so that's something that I think you see here, and that is some of the trauma that people experience. That's some left over from what we saw 5.5 years ago.
Jonah Kaplan, thank you so much. All right, I want to bring in CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman. Katrina, I want to get your perspective on what has happened over the past few hours there in Minneapolis from a legal perspective, and now the investigation that's going to follow.
I mean, as you were just talking about with Jonah, these videos of the incident that happened are going to be scrutinized. We're starting to see more and more videos emerge from different angles, get a better picture of what happened earlier today. You can see that that car was sort of blocking a lane of the road, that a truck stopped, 2 federal agents get out, approach the door, try to get the driver to get out of that car, a third crosses in front of it. The driver then reverses and tries to turn, and that's when the shooting begins. As Jonah said, how people perceive this video is very divided. We've seen President Trump say this was an act of self-defense, that the driver was trying to run over an ICE agent. Others say she was just trying to reverse and get out of the way, that this was unnecessary. This will also be analyzed in terms of, does this comport with the training, how these officers are supposed to handle this type of situation? Were they supposed to approach the vehicle in this way, to shoot at a moving vehicle of someone who appeared to be driving away? We know that the Minnesota authorities are cooperating with the FBI. This is going to be investigated on both a federal and state level. And as you were just talking with Jonah about, tensions are very high in that city right now as all of this unfolds.
I want to get to the soundbite from Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who demanded ICE get out of the city, saying they're causing chaos and distrust. Let's take a listen to that.
Since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis, not only is this a concern that we've had internally, we've been talking about it. They are not here to cause safety in this city. What they are doing is not to provide safety in America. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets. And in this case, quite literally killing people.
We also heard there, Katrina, from Governor Tim Walz. I'm curious, what stood out to you about the mayor's message and also the message from the governor?
I mean, what the governor said is he feels that this was a predictable and totally avoidable situation. He also told Minnesotans, do not take the bait, do not allow them to deploy federal troops into here, don't allow them to invoke the Insurrection Act, and do not allow them to declare martial law. He has said that state resources have been mobilized, that the National Guard is on standby, but ultimately what he says is that enough is enough. He feels that President Trump and Kristi Noem have done enough in Minnesota, and he wants the state back in its own control. They want the federal troops out of there now.
Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much. Well, much more ahead. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7.
Chilling with the queen, her name is Gail King.
Hey!
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning. CBS Morning.
CBS Mornings on CBS and where else?
Paramount Plus.
See you at 7.
CBS. CBS Mornings.
I want a mug. Yeah, good mug.
It was almost like being face to face with the devil.
48 Hours reports.
I fought and fought.
911, what is your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth. Stream 48 Hours, 24/7.
I'm Major Garrett in Washington, inviting you to the takeout. Politics, policy, people, and pop culture served up weeknights. What's on the menu? Plenty. The day's happenings with curiosity and formality and humor. It's serious discussion, but we do not take ourselves too seriously. Who is a better speaker, Mike Johnson or you?
Oh, come on.
Join me on the takeout. Streaming right here on CBS News 24/7.
Money Watch is your no-nonsense guide to taking control of your finances, where I offer practical, real-world advice with no jargon and no judgment. I'm Jill Schlesinger. Listen to Money Watch wherever you get your podcasts.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness.
Innovative.
Magical.
It's like being a child.
And truly original reporting.
God, you do your research. I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
Why America's last best place is at risk.
If the public land that you use were sold off, could you run your business?
A stalker sends menacing messages to a young mother before she's murdered.
They all just kind of said, I can't believe this happened. He did it. The stalker did it. There's a killer out there, and we're going to go after him.
But the investigation reveals a sinister setup.
I think his head is spinning, thinking about what else are they going to find.
48 Hours, now streaming on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Politics isn't a game. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? Politics is about policy. So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare? I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now? To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. We're still trying to piece together what exactly happened earlier today in Minnesota to lead to an ICE agent's shooting and killing of a 37-year-old woman. Video from moments after the incident paint what was a chaotic picture. I want to bring in CBS News' Chanel Call, who's been parsing through some of those videos today from our newsroom in New York City. Chanel, what can you tell us about what you've seen?
Well, Liz, you've been sharing that video with our viewers this afternoon that we've now verified here at CBS News, which shows the moment of impact. It shows the exact moment this woman was driving away from federal agents, and she was shot while she was still in her car by ICE agents in that neighborhood in Minneapolis today. We also have some video now to show you of what happened after, the aftermath. So take a look at your screen. You'll see here there were ICE agents sort of lining that street, which is a very residential street. So people were coming out of their homes. They were seeing this. They were filming this moment. And then they were seen pulling this woman out of her car. You also see them trying to perform CPR on this person. And then eventually what you see is them carrying this person away on their hands and feet. As we've been reporting all afternoon, Liz, we are hearing some varying accounts of what happened. The DHS is saying one thing, and then, of course, people that we've been talking to on the ground. In addition, Governor Tim Walz and some local law enforcement and local authorities like the mayor are giving us a different account of what they believe happened. I do want to note as well that we're getting some news from Governor Tim Walz's office just now, so let me show you what's on my screen here. We pulled up this press release that they've sent out, essentially saying the state is now readying its state resources. It's notified the National Guard to help prepare to, quote, protect public safety in Minneapolis following that federal ICE shooting that happened today. This is notable for a couple of different reasons, but obviously Governor Walz faced a lot of criticism and scrutiny for how long it took to deploy the National Guard back in 2020 after George Floyd was killed. And so today we're seeing this movement happening just within the first few hours of this ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis. Governor Walz is now saying that he's getting the National Guard prepared to intervene or to help out communities, he says, if that is needed.
Chanel Call, thank you so much for that update. And of course, we're going to be staying on top of this breaking news story all day long right here on CBS News 24/7. But I want to keep you updated on one other story that we've been following today. We have new developments in the case of Nick Reiner, who was charged with the murder of his own parents, filmmaker Rob Reiner and Michelle, his wife. A Los Angeles judge postponed Nick's arraignment after his attorney surprisingly withdrew from the case. Well, thanks so much for watching CBS News 24/7. The Takeout with Major Garrett is next.
Politics isn't a game. When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives? Politics is about policy. So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like health care? I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now? To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
It could be the greatest turnaround in college football history.
What is the magic here?
The undefeated Big Ten champs, Indiana Hoosiers.
Could you write the next Christmas classic? Plus a tasty French holiday treat. And Kate Hudson and Hugh Jackman make beautiful music. 'Tis the season, Sunday morning.
Chilling with the queen, her name is Gayle King.
Hey! CBS.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning. CBS Morning. CBS Morning.
CBS Mornings on CBS and where else? Paramount Plus. See you at 7.
CBS. CBS Mornings.
I want a mug. Yeah, good mug.
I'm Major Garrett in Washington, inviting you to the Takeout. Politics, policy, people, and pop culture served up weeknights. What's on the menu? Plenty. The day's happenings with curiosity and formality and humor. It's serious discussion, but we do not take ourselves too seriously. Who was a better speaker, Mike Johnson or you?
Oh, come on.
Join me. on The Takeout. Streaming right here on CBS News 24/7.
Here it is.
60 Minutes
I am not looking down.
takes you on the perilous trek to Everest.
Every rock counts. We're so close.
Could you write the next Christmas classic? Plus a tasty French holiday treat. And Kate Hudson and Hugh Jackman make beautiful music. 'Tis the season, Sunday morning.
A young father dies after he's found injured on a rural bridge.
He was laying right around here.
Did his child's mother, a high school softball coach, recruit one of her former players to kill him?
She didn't want Shay involved in her life or in her daughter's life.
Conversations at the table would be, how can we get rid of him?
48 Hours, now streaming on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Casey, we do this job because others can't.
U.S. Marshal, don't move!
I guess the training wheels are off.
This unit is forged in the fire.
To the protectors.
Marshals, new series.
A federal immigration officer shoots and kills a motorist in Minneapolis. DHS said it was to suppress an act of domestic terrorism. Witnesses and city officials called it a reckless and senseless act of violence. The U.S. seizes 2 additional Venezuelan tankers and asserts control over that country's oil reserves. We have brand new polling on reaction to U.S. actions in Venezuela. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on new nutritional guidelines, vaccine recommendations, and the withholding of federal health care funds in some blue states. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to The Takeout. There is, at this hour, a standoff in Minneapolis. It is physical and it is rhetorical. It is quite obviously tense, and it may well prove to be unpredictable. The underlying cause is a woman driving a vehicle was shot and killed by a federal immigration agent. Descriptions of what happened vary dramatically. DHS says the vehicle attempted to ram ICE officers in a residential neighborhood.
We're continuing to gather more information, but this goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day. These vehicle rammings are domestic acts of terrorism. We're working with the Department of Justice to prosecute them as such.
Videos from the scene suggest something very different. Furious local and state officials said the shooting victim did not pose a threat and under no circumstance deserved to die. The mayor of Minneapolis called on ICE, deployed in numbers 15 times larger than its standard law enforcement posture in Minneapolis, to leave the city.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is this was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
We will have reports from the scene and speak to a member of the Minneapolis City Council. But first, we want to show you, without commentary, the events from earlier today of the shooting of that motorist. Nicole Skanga joins us now from Minneapolis. Nicole, it's been a very turbulent day in Minneapolis. Set the scene for us and what we know.
Well, Major, I'm currently standing where ICE immigration operations began earlier today. That operation became a crime scene. That crime scene became a demonstration zone as we watched as ICE agents deployed tear gas on protesters, and FBI descended on the scene, as well as local and state law enforcement. That protest became a vigil, and right now behind me, folks are lighting candles, are laying flowers, and are saying prayers, singing for a 37-year-old woman who was shot dead. We know that the immigration and enforcement removal presence here in Minneapolis has grown over the past few days, beginning on Sunday. That's actually why we're here in Minneapolis, Major. We interviewed the DHS secretary just yesterday on what is the single largest deployment of federal agents to an American city under the Trump administration. There are more than 2,000 federal agents on the ground, including 1,500 ICE or immigration agents, and that is 15 times the number of immigration agents that would typically be assigned to the Minneapolis area. Major, I don't want our viewers to forget just how raw this community is, and we have heard it from witnesses, and we have heard it from neighbors who are heartbroken, who have told us, quote, "Is this what America looks like?" That where I'm standing today, that immigration operation turned crime scene, turned demonstration, turned vigil is less than 1 mile away from where George Floyd was killed at the hands of police.
Picking up on that point, Nicole, it's been relayed to me that there has been for quite some time, long before this ICE deployment, nervousness in the community writ large in Minneapolis about police presence, police activity. And as we saw in the video, the approaching vehicle unmarked, which may have contributed to confusion, anxiety about what was about to transpire, or what this was about. Is that something you're also hearing?
Absolutely, Major. It is a sense of fear that is deeply rooted here in Minneapolis as the widening fraud probe turned into a federal law enforcement deployment that many within Minneapolis felt was targeting the Somali American community. And we asked DHS Secretary Noem about that. She relayed to us that immigration enforcement operations here weren't particularly directed at any community, that they were going after, quote, the worst of the worst criminal offenders. We did go on an ICE raid alongside the DHS Secretary in the pre-dawn hours yesterday, and we witnessed there a very extensive law enforcement operation with all unmarked vehicles, aside from one Bearcat in which the DHS Secretary was inside. So we have seen a rising tension, even as we were on that law enforcement operation. Protesters in the streets drawing whistles, screaming, throwing things towards agents. We've heard the DHS Secretary express worries about the safety of her community, but we've also heard community leaders and state leaders, including Governor Walz, push back on that, saying that he has warned that something like this would happen for weeks, if not months. We've seen similar scenes play out across the country, including in Chicago, where just a few months ago there was a vehicle ramming incident between a bystander and ICE immigration enforcement that resulted in an agent opening fire. We saw that same thing play out today. The difference, Major, being that someone is killed today. Someone is dead. Major.
Nicole Skenga, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Jason Chavez is a Minneapolis City Council member, and he represents the city's 9th Ward, the area where today's shooting took place. Council member, what do you know about the victim? What do you know about the circumstances? And what do you believe the repercussions should be?
Well, first and foremost, I want to give my condolences to Renee Nicole Good and her family, the individual that was in our community that was murdered by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The behavior of these ICE agents in our neighborhood is creating an unwelcoming, unsafe, and disgusting behavior that is only tearing our families apart. And as you saw today with these videos, has taken the life of a community member here in Minneapolis. What needs to happen right now is we need justice. We need this ICE officer arrested and fired immediately from ICE. And we also need to make sure that our community members continue to patrol our neighborhoods here in Minneapolis and across the state to make sure that ICE isn't kidnapping more of our neighbors.
Threshold question for you, Mr. Chavez. Do you believe ICE has any legitimate authority in Minneapolis ever?
The work of tearing our families apart, the work of separating families in the city and in the state, the work of picking up mothers at bus stops, folks running food trucks, folks driving to work is inhumane behavior and has no place in this city.
Even if it is in furtherance of enforcing existing federal immigration law?
The work that they do is tear families apart, and that is not work that, as a city elected official, I will ever support.
Did you fear this would happen when ICE dramatically enlarged its footprint in Minneapolis?
Yeah, they have a whole bunch of folks as ICE agents that don't know how to do their jobs, that are untrained and unqualified. And the behavior that we saw today and we're seeing across our state is a bunch of rookies that don't know how to even do their jobs and are creating terror in our community. So this is not surprising at all.
You said murder. Why do you use that word?
This was murder by ICE officials. They did not need to shoot somebody that was leaving the scene.
How do you interpret what the video shows?
It shows ICE being untrained, unmanageable, and not being able to de-escalate a situation. They need to be held accountable, arrested, and fired.
And what recourse does the city of Minneapolis have if that doesn't happen? And who do you believe the arresting authority can be or should be?
My hope is that the state takes charge of this and makes sure that these individuals are fired, or that these individuals are held accountable by the law.
Member of the Minneapolis City Council, Ward 9, Jason Chavez, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Schechter joins us now. She's the head of CBS News' Crime and Public Safety Unit. Anna, you've been following this all day. Your impressions of what is visible, what the investigation will do going forward, and do you suspect that there could be a clashing of federal and state equities here because there are very sharp divisions about who's responsible and what actually went down?
That's an excellent question, Major, because already we've seen a clash of narratives. You have the mayor and the governor of the state of Minnesota telling a story about a murder that occurred, and we just heard from a city council member as well. And then you have something completely different. Almost immediately after the shooting, you had Kristi Noem and Donald Trump posting to Truth Social, and Noem posting to X a statement describing what happened as domestic terrorism and saying that the victim of the shooting was running over the agent. Now, I've seen 3 angles so far. What I want to know is what happened before this occurred, in the minutes and maybe even a half an hour before this, because I want to know why those agents were pulling on the door, asking her to stop and get out of the vehicle. They were directing her to get out of the vehicle. It looks like she was turning to try to leave, but why were they doing that? Were they frustrated by her protesting? Were they angry at her? Did something else happen? We just don't know. But certainly from at least 2 of those angles, it does appear that she was trying to drive away, and there was that officer who drew his weapon and fired that shot. What was going on in his mind? Because central to what happens as this plays out is, did he act with a reasonable use of force given his perceived threat? There's a judgment call, and the guidelines for how federal agents respond place that judgment call at the heart of how they are supposed to act. So investigators are likely interviewing him, asking him how he experienced it, what was going through his mind, what led up to this. So all of that's going to go into an investigation, and I hope that that will eventually get released to the public.
Very quickly, Anna, is there a possibility of any body cam video in this matter?
That's a great question. Had they been Minneapolis Police Department officials, then yes. But these were ICE agents. They are not required to wear body cam video. And of course, that would be helpful in adding to this picture that investigators are putting together.
Anna Schechter,